Yeah.
We ready to go? Should we wait for John or Pat?
Sorry, didn't realize I was muted there. If we don't wait for Pat, well, we'll still have a quorum. So I believe it's up to you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'd say give it 30 seconds and then we should just roll ahead.
Okay, I'll wait 30 seconds.
I just sent him an email too, so.
Hey, JR.
Yeah.
You might take Kleenex and polish your lens on your camera. It's just a little hazy.
Thank you.
Also, it looks like one of your colleagues bought the house across the street from me.
Oh, really? Who's that?
I'm trying to remember. I'll come up with it and let you know.
Oh, and in the rattlesnake there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Peter.
What's his last name?
Losney, L-A-C.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Haven't met him yet.
Okay, I'll get started. Welcome to the May 2020 Missoula Parking Commission meeting. All of the meeting body members are attending from a remote location. We are holding this meeting virtually. So we'll be doing public comment a little differently than usual via a live call-in phone line, just like if you were calling into a radio show or to make a pledge during a telephone. I'm going to ask our meeting host, Jody, to share our public comment call-in information. And in a few minutes, I'll ask for public comment. When you call in, you'll be in a virtual waiting room until it is your turn to comment. We will take calls in the order received. Because this works just like a live call-in show, be sure to mute your TV or computer. And when you join the meeting, there will, or if you don't mute, there will be an echo. I'll be observing a speaking limit of 3 minutes so we can hear from everyone. So we'll get started. I would like to call the meeting, the May meeting of the Missoula Parking Commission to order. Can we have a roll call of members to determine who is present?
Guess I got to unmute. John Romer, present.
J.R. Casillas, present.
Pat Corrick, present.
Joe Easton, present.
Jim Gallipo with JCCS, present.
Tiffany Brander, Parking Services Director, present.
Jody Pilgrim, Parking Services Manager, present.
Is that everybody, Jody? that is on the call?
We do not have anyone who is called in for public comment at this time.
Do you think I
Yes,
should
that
read
is-
the script anyway, or just move on? Jody?
I think that we should probably just move on. If anyone calls in, I will let you know.
Okay. So we'll be moving on through our agenda. First, any board members have any adjustments to the agenda?
I don't.
Hearing none, I'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the board meeting held March 5th, 2020. Has everyone seen it and have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I've read the minutes. I have a couple of corrections in spelling, but the content I agree with. So I think I don't think we need to go through that. A couple of spelling challenges is all. So I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve the March 5th, 2020 meeting minutes.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Any communications and presentations today? Jim, financial statement.
Okay, the financials are through March 31st. We will have we have the information. We just recently received the information for April, so I'm sure we will have that by the next meeting. Just a comment that as you'll see, the financials through March don't really reflect much, if anything, in the way of what has happened since Missoula just went into the lockdown and whatnot towards the end of March. So basically, would you just like to go over the dashboard, Joe?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's go take a look at the dashboard. As far as the larger accounts in the assets area, accounts receivable 157, cash and investments about just under our 1,700,000, and then a few other little odds and ends receivables. No big changes in the fixed assets areas or the other asset areas. So total assets sit at 23,113,000. On that, liabilities, we've got some accrued bank interest, accrual on the city contract, accrued compensation, which is sick leave and whatnot. The accrued merchant fees, we've just been accruing that. We don't really get that trued up until later on. And that is a question that maybe we can have some conversation with the city on. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be handled for like April, May, and whoever knows how long. Because obviously with not a lot going on in that arena, you would think those merchant fees would drop off, but I'm not exactly sure how that's going to be handled or when that will be handled. Usually it's just kind of an accrual until year end. So other liabilities, just the standard, our pension liabilities, our note payable, our with the bank and whatnot. Down in that area there, we've got cash and investments. This is kind of our true up to get to the net cash available at this point. We go from the cash and investments shown on the balance sheet of $1,699,000. We have various things, accruals and whatnot that are in there. So net cash available at the end of March was approximately $1,281,000. Next page, page 4, our revenue had about $254,000 in revenue for March of 2020. Year to date, $2,310,000 compared to last year to date of $1,975,000. A large increase in that area, as you can see, the leased parking because of the mostly because of the new lot that came online. Meter revenue has continued to grow, or it had anyway through March, year over year. So that was looking good. Basically, all of the various revenue categories were looking good through March 31st. On the expense side, nothing stands out there. General administrative about 19,000, year to date 213 compared to 230. Meter expenses 35,569. That number, even though even with the lack of activity and whatnot in the next coming months, that number is going to hold in there because most of that is our monthly fees on the equipment and warranty amortization and things like that. So that number is not going to be decreasing, even though the revenues will be decreasing. So that will stick in there. Personnel, professional fees, repairs and maintenance, utilities, nothing stands out there. Expense total $138,000. Year to date, we're at $1,167,000 compared to $1,134,000. So basically, revenues are up 300 and some odd thousand, and expenses are only up about 30,000. So our net income from operations as of March 31st, $1,143,000 compared to $840,000 last year. And then we have our other income and expenses, bank interest, bond interest, city contract, depreciation and whatnot. Those pretty much stay the same from month to month, little variances, but not that much. So net income overall from altogether $410,000 compared to $173,000 year to date. And for those in the audience, this is a June 30 year end, so we're 9 months through the current fiscal year. And then we just have our page 5 and 6. We have our various charts and whatnot that we put out every month. So again, nothing real surprising through March. Not a lot of change in operations through that period. So.
Any questions for Jim?
Yeah, this is John Romer. Jim, with the April data and the statement, when do you anticipate being able to come out with a preliminary financials for that we could look at?
Oh, I would think we would be able to have that probably early part of next week, John. We just got the final information Friday. But I would say probably we would be able to send that out to everyone next week, certainly, probably the early to mid next week.
Thank you. Yeah, I this business of the credit card fees and so forth, I'm going to be very curious to see how the city actually is reconciling that myself. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to our fees coming from the city, or at least for the bank charges, and find out just how they line up with the actual revenue that's being generated from our equipment.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know when we'll have that conversation with them. Certainly, I don't know when that's going to happen, John, because that isn't something that normally really gets trued up until it's time for the audit and whatnot. So we just have an accrual that we do on a monthly basis. So we'll try to find out. I'm sure that they're interested too.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Thanks, John. Any other questions for Jim? Yes, Tiffany.
I just wanted to follow up kind of on the city fees. I believe it was at our last meeting, we had discussed how we were about 30% of our meter transactions were going through Passport, and how that was really would affect that amount. And so we did work with finance, and they did just sort of some preliminary numbers, and it didn't, because all of our overall transactions went up. We're still sitting right around that. I think we went down from about 30 cents per transaction to about 26 cents per transaction. So our meter transactions are going up, even though 30% of them are still coming through Passport, which does save on those fees for the 30%, but because our transactions are going up. So as Jim said, it is really something that they do sort of at year end, but we'll absolutely follow up with them and see if we can't get a more concrete answer for you.
Thanks. Any questions or comments on the financial report, financial statement? Thanks as always, Jim. We'll move on to agenda number 8, director's report.
Thank you, Joe. I will do my best to try and keep this brief for our first virtual meeting. I just wanted to briefly go back. So we haven't met since March, and obviously a lot has happened since then. From a COVID standpoint, as many of you know, just from our communications that were on the website and on all of our email signatures and going out through the city, we did stop writing meter violations in the second week of March. Just as things were starting to close down, we wanted to be able to support the downtown community while still keeping our services as high as we could. So our officers were still writing lease violations to secure those lease lots for our leaseholders, as well as safety violations. With the stay-at-home order, we closed our office on officially the entire office and sent staff home on March 27th was the last day that our admin team was in the office. And at that time, our maintenance team and our enforcement team also were taken offline. So we, during that time period, decided to waive our May leaseholder payments. That was in a lot of conversations, a lot of consultation with the city attorney's office, the finance department, our bond attorneys, and city administration. We felt that we had reached a point in the budget where we were able to really consider our bond capacity and where we needed to be at 150% of that. And with our revenue from the last 9 months of the year, we were able to achieve that. And then also knowing that we were going to be very frugal with our expenses for the remainder of the budgeted year, as well as has some salary savings due to some retirement and open positions. And so it was a decision that I made for just for our downtown community. I do feel that it was the right decision to be made, particularly since we didn't have enforcement at that time and our maintenance team was gone. So while we were still maintaining our lots and structures for safety, so any broken bottles, anything like that, vomit, feces, our normal maintenance tasks weren't being completed. And so we did go ahead and waive those May lease payments. We brought our team back online on May 4th. We have a limited staff capacity in our maintenance department and our enforcement team, and currently your administrative team is working from home. And we're able to provide all of our services as we normally would, or alternatively online or via the phone. And so keeping in line with the governor's order with City of Missoula policy, we did bring our maintenance team back online and an enforcement officer, and then the rest of us are working from home at this point. Um, from May 4th until today, the enforcement officer that we have has been focusing solely on safety violations. We provided free parking in downtown from the beginning of May until the 18th. We advertised that with radio spots, and hopefully you heard those, but we advertised that with radio, on Facebook, on the Downtown Association's newsletters and website, and pretty much everywhere that we could, just to really get the word out so folks knew that they didn't need to pay for parking, and it was really important to come down and try and support the downtown community while they were getting things back online. As of today, it is the 18th, and we have started to charge for parking again and write all of our normal violation citations as we normally would. With the safety violations definitely still being the most important factor. That's really what our enforcement team is focusing on right now. Our maintenance team, since the 4th, has been, it's actually worked out pretty well for them because they don't have to worry about doing anything with the meters or the gates. They're really strongly focusing on catching up on the maintenance that was a little lacking from when they were not here every day. And then also all of our spring landscaping. With such a wet spring, everything is really growing in quickly. So they are working on that. They've gotten the majority of our lots cleaned, and we're basically on the hunt for wood chips. So if anyone knows of any wood chips, there's a lot of people at home doing landscaping right now. So it's we were able to get some wood chips for some of our lots, and then we're on a wait list for some others. So everything has been weeded, but we're working on landscaping as the best that we can. Starting the end of last week and this week, they have focused more on our meters and our gating equipment, getting everything back online, sanitizing everything. They are working on sanitizing all of our kiosks, all of our gating equipment daily now. So at least once per day, they're going through. The Downtown Association, their ambassador, Dave, who is not having to work with the public as much because there's just really isn't that many folks downtown. He's helping us with sanitizing any of the kiosks that he comes across, as well as when he does come across folks, just letting them know that the Passport app is a great way to avoid having to touch the meters. And so we're just sort of working on that marketing as well. So the other thing about the Passport app, I think that's important that we mention, is that we really want downtown businesses, as we always have, but we really feel like there's more reason to now, really look into our Passport validation system. And so that would provide, it's a really great option for folks that are doing takeout or pickup orders to just pay for their customers' parking. They don't have to look for a special zone. They don't have to look for a drop off or a loading zone, for instance. A business can just say, hop on Passport, get your 15 minutes of parking, here's your validation code, it's free. And then they're able to pull up, do a quick stop and head out. So we're very fortunate to be able to have the 15-minute option on Passport. And we're looking, Jody's working with the Downtown Association and just within our staff to sort of get a flyer ready and really try and communicate with the downtown community on that's an available option for them. So that's pretty much where we are at, where we were, and how we got here. So to just a few updates, as you know, every year, at least myself, if not myself and Jody, will go to the IPMI yearly conference. We had already registered for it. It was supposed to be in Texas this year, but it has been canceled, so we will not be going to that in June. But we are really excited that they've shifted to a virtual platform, so we'll still get to have a lot of classes, some interesting network opportunities, but we're looking forward to being able to still participate in that just industry standard and have the ability to talk to our peers and see how parking world gets through all of this. The second conference that we normally go to is the PIPTA, it's the Pacific Intermountain Transportation Authorities conference, and that has been canceled, and we will not be going to that this year. So it ends up being a savings for our budget, which is great, and there'll be plenty of opportunities next year. So just an update on that. We have worked on a few different things, and by we, I mostly say our amazing administrative team, Jody and Zoe, have been working tirelessly to really get some great new customer service options online for folks so they don't have to come into the office. Some of those things are, right now they're working on getting an online portal ready for our residential parking permit season, and really just overall all of our permits that we issue. As we move to a virtual permitting environment, we don't require the use of a physical permit anymore, which allows us to sell those permits online. Folks can submit all of their information online. We get an email with all of their information, we check it, and then we can send it to them with an invoice. We do still have some floating permits, so there'll be some that will just need to go through the mail, but we'll sort of cross that bridge as it comes. But this is something that we've wanted to do for a long time. So instead of folks having to come into the office to get their permits, they can just do that from home or wherever. So it's a really exciting thing that that we're working on, and that will just be through our normal website. So it'll just be a form on our website that'll shoot an email to us, and we'll be able to take care of it. The other thing that Jody's been working on is, well, a lot of things with Passport, but one of them that I'm the most excited about, I would say, is that we hear a lot from our service workers in the downtown community that live in the downtown community that they get off work at 2 a.m. and then they have to go to a meter to pay for their parking when they're sleeping, or they have to wake up when they're sleeping and use the Passport app to pay for their parking, because we didn't have a prepay option that worked for them. So now we do have a prepay option. Folks can prepay for their parking at 10:30 at night. So if they're a service worker, they get home at midnight, they can log in, they can get their discounted employee or resident rate, pay on Passport, and go to sleep and not have to worry about it. So I'm really excited about that, and I think it'll be a great option for those folks who just want to sleep instead of waking up at 9 a.m. to pay the meter. So those are just some new things that we're working on. I wanted to follow up with some updates to our last meeting, and that was at our last meeting, we did our first round of resolutions in the history of the Parking Commission. And so those have now been posted on our website. So folks can just go to our regular website, and there is a page that says MPC board. I think it actually just says board resolutions. And they can, there's the resolution, they can click on the link, they can see the related policy and the resolution, and everyone will just be able to see it without having to contact us and get further information. So that's pretty exciting. And so that's a good thing there. Two other things to update is in light of everything and not having that many people utilize the meters during the month of May, as our maintenance team comes back online and services everything, they're refilling paper, they're cleaning everything, they're making sure everything is good. They are removing the stickers that are for extend by phone via the kiosk. So this is something that we have wanted to kind of turn off. Less than 1% of our transactions of our transactions are actually extend by phone transactions. And with Passport having the extend option, it's something that we've been needing to get rid of for a while. And we sort of wanted to switch it out with Passport, but in the beginning we wanted to see how Passport was looking, were people liking it, that sort of thing. I think we've absolutely achieved that with over 30% of our transactions via Passport. That extend by phone service is an additional $5 per month per machine. So it saves us, roughly $700 a month, so almost $8,000 a year. And folks have just a better customer service experience using Passport. Not to say that the extend by phone isn't great, it's just not as user-friendly as Passport. So I think it was definitely the right choice there. And we'll be moving towards that here at the end of the month. And then lastly, you'll see on the agenda that we'll be discussing a video surveillance policy. And it's kind of changed. We went from operational camera to security camera to video surveillance and back and forth. But I assure you from our previous conversations, it's all the same thing. It's just some video surveillance in our garages. that are there for the safety of our patrons, but also and mostly for the safety of our gating equipment. So that way, when we move to a 24/7 gates down environment, even though we won't be charging 24/7 at this time, the gating equipment will just be an additional layer of protection there, or if we need that information and if anything is damaged. So Jody has actually been the project manager on that entire project. She's been working with IT and the camera company religiously. She's been really great about it. So Jody, I'm not sure if would you like to just give a brief update on the security camera? Or whatever we're calling it. I'm sorry, video surveillance.
The video surveillance cameras. So prior to shutting down at the end of March, we were able to get all of the cameras installed over in the Park Place garage. They've been covered with paper because we can't use them until we have signage letting people know that they're there. Now that we have some of our maintenance staff coming back, we were able to invite Systems Northwest to finish installing the cameras over in our Central Park garage. Oh, sorry, one technical issue. Okay. We were having a microphone issue. Can everybody hear me on screen? Great. So now Systems Northwest is back. They will be finishing the camera install in our Central Park garage today and tomorrow. We're working with Big Bear Signs to get the signs that we need to notify the public that the cameras are there and running before we turn them on. And then the control units for the Park Place garage and the Central Park garage will be installed on Wednesday, and our software that runs those units will also be installed on Wednesday. At that point, we will work with Systems Northwest to do a virtual training so that our office staff and our maintenance staff can use the cameras and see what is going on in the garage 24 hours a day. That's it. That's my only update.
Sorry, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that for Jody before I continue?
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, my compliments to the staff for what you've been able to accomplish during this mess. It was just absolutely amazing to me. Jody, as far as will the surveillance be monitored merely while staff is in the building during the work hours, or how is that going to be managed? In other words, who's looking at that, or is it just a passive thing that we can go back and review, or what's the thought?
It will be viewed as needed. So we're not going to have someone watching a stream of what's coming out on the cameras 24 hours a day, but we will have it there to view if we need it, and then we can pull files from previous days as needed as well.
And maybe I could ask some of this on, do they keep a week's worth? This is a lot of data. Just how far back do we keep things, or are they just getting uploaded to YouTube's? I don't know.
That was going to be my question too.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry, that is part of the policy that Tiffany has been working on with our city attorney's office. So like the retention policy for ourselves and for the city, and where those records are retained. So I think that's actually a question that Tiffany will answer.
Yes, thanks, Jody. So yeah, we are looking at a 30-day retention policy. And within that policy that we'll go over here in a bit, you'll definitely see that there's requirements for who can access it, how can it can be accessed, where it's stored, that sort of a thing. So right now, unless as we go through the policy, anyone wants to make recommendations on a change in that, right now we're looking at 30 days.
Any other questions for Tiffany on her report?
I do have just two more things, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Great, thank you. So two last things is I did want to update you on the, sorry, I want to share my screen here for just a second. It'll let me, let's see. Okay, not what I wanted. So the North Riverside Parks and Trails, you may have seen, I believe it was NBC Montana did a story on it last week. They have launched their virtual out to lunch. Here, I was just last week on the 13th, and this is the entire plan for the North Riverside Parks and Trails. So that includes a large portion of where our Riverside parking is. So this is our Caris lot, New Park lot, and Riverside lot. So there's a lot of really fun plans. This is in conjunction with the downtown master plan as an addition to it. And you can find it via the Downtown Association's website, but it's through Engage Missoula. It's a really interesting website. There's a lot of videos that you can take a look at that just shows all of their presentations that they're doing in a virtual format instead of doing that, instead of doing it there in person. This will obviously greatly affect our parking downtown over the next 10 years. So it is important that you take a look at it. I will obviously keep you updated as we move forward. I am part of the city's team on that. So I am definitely aware of what's going on and looking forward to being a partner in the project. I think this is a beautiful reuse of the downtown area. The initial master plan, over 10 years ago, started talking about replacing parking and making it back into a park. And so this is sort of just breathing new life into that. So I would encourage all of you to just take a look at that at www.engagemissoula.com, North Riverside Parks and Trails. And I'm happy to send that out if you need me to. The last thing I just wanted to briefly touch on is for you to start considering scheduling our next meeting date. So obviously we're meeting later in the month than we normally would. So I would leave it up to you folks to decide if you would like to meet again at our next scheduled meeting, which is going to be June 4th, or if you'd like to push it out a month and kind of get us back in a monthly schedule. And that would be the Thursday, July 2nd. Obviously it's the weekend of July 4th, with the 4th being observed on Friday the 3rd. But I feel like in our current environment, that might not matter as much as it would in normal years. So just for your consideration, we'll touch base on that again, but I did want to bring that up here in my report today. And that's the end of my report, sir.
Thanks. Any questions for Tiffany on her report? Tiffany, I think because it got so much attention, would you circle back to the decision that we made to waive or let let the meters go uncollected or unenforced, and then the decision set that the commission made and you made to start charging again? I think it's important, if this is reviewed later, of how and why we made those decisions and why we're back to where we are.
Certainly. So when we had stopped writing meter violations in the beginning of March, there was so few folks coming downtown, and those that were coming downtown were really just trying to keep the businesses going as long as they could. And when we started discussing waiving meter payments, and by waiving, the meters do still accept coin at this point. Folks are able to pay them, and we've seen, some people are continuing to do that even though it's not required. But the main decision was that, as a parking commission, we are self-funded. We don't take any funds from the general tax base. And so all of our parking services are paid by parking revenue. Of that parking revenue, almost half comes from our meter revenue. And so it's incredibly important that we continue with that meter revenue. We were seeing a significant decrease in the number of people that were coming downtown and paying the meters. And with our enforcement team not being online anymore, we weren't able to sanitize the meters anymore. And so folks were still able to use the Passport app, but it was it wasn't required that they do that or go to the meters. And when we looked at the first 7 months of our revenue, we had a really strong year as far as, well, first of all, Rome coming online last year and really contributing with that lease revenue and additional hourly revenue. All of the construction that has been happening downtown has been very helpful for us this year as far as revenue goes. And then also those meter payments, where we get the majority of our meter payments through this summer to late fall. Last year was really strong. We had a lot of folks downtown. And in looking at that, our cash balance with everything that we have budgeted, along with our bonding capacity that has to be at about 150%. We did feel comfortable with waiving meter payments for the month, knowing that we would be able to meet our bond capacity and not have any negative effects on our bonds for FY20. It is important to note that, as Jim said when he went through our financials, we do have a large cash balance, but our bond covenants do not take that into account. So it's directly related to our actual operating revenue from that year. And so while FY21 will likely want to be, very, very lean on our expenses because we don't know what our revenues will look like, on FY20, we had gotten to the point where our capacity was reached, and from a revenue standpoint, we felt comfortable that we would not only be able to meet our capacity, but still be able to, pay all of our debts, all of our monthly obligations and our staffing, and provide a service to the downtown community when they're really hurting and they needed it the most. So they have been open now since the 4th. So we're going on 3 weeks of the downtown community going back, and you can tell there are people out on the streets, there are people parking, there are people circling the block looking for parking spaces. Our garages are filling up. And it's important now that we start regulating that parking again to make sure that turnover is happening, and we're able to keep making all of the payments that we need to make and continue with our revenue.
Thanks. Any questions for Tiffany about that?
Sure, I have one, Mr. Chairman, for Tiffany. Do you have a sense yet? I know you've gotten the preliminary numbers for April's revenue, meter revenue, and I'm just wondering, do you have any sense, either by percentage or whatever, of what the drop has been from a normal month to now, or from March to April even, in terms of the revenue?
It's significant. Jody, I bet she just finished the financials on Friday. Do you have a better sense of the actual amounts? I think the last time I saw meter revenue was under 10.
And
yeah, our meter revenue was right over $6,000 for April.
And normally would be, I don't want to hold you to it, just 70.
Over 100,000.
Over 100, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that it really illustrates our problem. But we run fairly slim in terms of our margins and whatnot, and our obligation is to keep a healthy parking unit for the community. So we do need to be responsible and fire up the revenues again.
And I think to that point, just to keep the meters online, just the system fees, our monthly fees for the meters only, not counting anything else, I mean, that's $9,000 a month. So we didn't even cover that in meter payments this month. So it's a significant expense. And if the meters are going unused, we still have to pay that fee per month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Tiffany about our decisions in April and May. Last thing, Tiffany, what information or direction have you heard from the mayor's office about a fifth appointment?
I have not received an update from them. I did send an email late last week, but I have not heard back yet. I was contacted from a few individuals who were interested in the position, and I did forward them over to the mayor's office. But unfortunately, I do not have an update on our fifth board member at this time. But I will continue asking.
Any questions for Tiffany about anything else that she addressed in her report, or any questions you have?
Maybe for the, oh, sorry, Joe, for the next meeting, maybe we could circle back. I just was remembering, you mentioned it earlier, talking about the construction that's happening downtown. And do we want to address policies around contractors taking parking spaces offline and what that revenue looks like during that period? I think I'd like to, revisit that conversation.
Okay, I've made a note on that. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, that was one comment that came to me, is that contractors seem to accelerate their parking right in front of the project when they learned that it wasn't being enforced. And so to make sure that it's now being enforced and has the effect that we want it to, by opening it up for downtown shoppers, not necessarily contractors, is important. Last call for any questions or comments to Tiffany. We don't have any action items on the agenda today, so we'll move on to the non-action items and 2 old business items and go to our fiscal year 21 Parking Commission budget. Tiffany.
Thank you. So I'll screen share a document here that I've been working with the City Finance Department on, just some budgeting scenarios. Last month, we really focused on the revenue side of things. You folks passed some resolutions on an annual rate review, as well as our FY21 annual increases to both permits and lease permits or leases. And I had completed the budget, and then everything changed. So we've redone the budget based on expenses. And sorry, I'm just gonna screen share here again. Great. So I have a few scenarios that we're going to look at. We went back through and really took a close look at all of our expenses, because I briefly touched on earlier, it's going to be exponentially important that we are very cautious with our expenses this year, particularly because we don't know what the tourist season and the downtown will look like in our busiest months, which is really where we get the vast majority of our lease revenue, or I'm sorry, of our meter revenue from. And then also with folks continuing to work from home, we may see a decline in our leases, people turning in their leases. And while at last meeting, we also, you also approved oversell rates for our, or percentages for all of our leases, those we might not be able to get that many people in. So it's really super crazy right now. So we just did some best guess scenarios as far as expenses go. We also had some retirements to take into account, and so we were able to update a few things on the expense side and then on the revenue side as well. So I just wanted to, sorry, all of your faces are kind of hovering. Okay. I just wanted to go through the first scenario. So scenario 1 is in column B as well as G. And so this scenario includes all of the rate increases that you approved in our March meeting as scheduled on July 1st of 2020. It doesn't change anything in our short-term parking for our meter revenue. Just again, kind of a best guess, we went with somewhere around $75,000 average per month. That could definitely change, but that's sort of where we were feeling comfortable, instead of, $100,000 to $120,000 is what we normally see per month. We also cut down on the parking ticket revenue that we expect to see of an average of about $20,000 per month. Obviously, our enforcement team hasn't been writing tickets, and that will sort of carry over into the FY21 budget with 30 days to remit payment, that sort of a thing. And then the permits, we kept that number with the rate increase as approved in the last meeting, starting July 1st. And so in the first scenario, as you scroll down, you'll see our expenses and then our bond debt coverage. Our bond capacity coverage, which is obviously very important to us. We need to make sure that that stays over the 150% at all times. And so scenario 1 gets us there at 1.79%. This budget is your budget. I will share this spreadsheet with you, and you can make changes, updates, kind of discussion points for our next meeting, but I just wanted to go over a few different scenarios. And so within that, that sort of goes over all of the revenues. For the expenses in scenario 1, it does talk about those retirements and just some adjustments as far as in union increases, that sort of a thing. It also includes in our grants and contributions column, everything that we've currently would normally just include in our budget. In looking through, our fixed costs or our supplies and our purchase services, I whittled those down to the point where I was comfortable. But as you know, in a lean year, our grants and contributions account it's one that we can reduce without having any sort of operational impact. And so in years past, that grants and contributions column has gone up to $160,000. And so I went through and just sort of pulled what we would normally budget for in that. So that includes TDM, which is Mr. TMA, Missoula in Motion, the zero fare contribution, the out to lunch trolley, and just a few other things that are in our grants and contributions spreadsheet here. So basically anything under TDM is included, and you've all seen this spreadsheet before. I also went ahead and included the 1/3 of the BID officer salary that we've contributed to in the past, as well as the marketing campaign through the Missoula Downtown Association that we contribute $30,000 to annually. So that is scenario 1, pretty much doesn't change anything. Scenario 2 would give our leaseholders some additional sort of time to get back on track, get back online. And that would keep their lease payments as they currently are for FY21. Currently for FY20 for the first quarter of FY21. And then at the end of that first quarter, then we would implement those increases. Again, completely your decision, but I do feel like we're definitely in a, it would be very helpful for the downtown community and our parkers to be able to come back online with those not reduced, but kind of the budgeted amounts that they currently have before the increases. Everything else really stays the same. And then under expenses is really just keeping those TDM related expenses. So as I said, the grants and contributions column is pretty fluid. It's a large chunk of money that we're able to just really look closely at every year. And so scenario 2 includes just making those TDM only, and that is obviously a higher bond coverage ratio, which is important to look at, especially again, because we don't know what our revenue is going to look like for the first 3 to 4 months of the fiscal year. Scenario 3, not sure if you guys can see that. Can you? Okay. Scenario 3 also includes that no change in our fees until October 1st. and keeps everything else the same. But it also does add back in that additional parking enforcement officer. So last meeting, we briefly spoke about the need, and the downtown master plan throughout really speaks to the need of us having additional parking enforcement officers. Originally discussed was 2 additional parking enforcement officers. But again, if we're looking at a lean year, I do think that just 1 additional PEO would be fine. That's reflected here in column D. It also includes the downtown officer in addition to the TDM. And then the third, can you see the third with your faces? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna move your faces. Okay, so, and then the 4th scenario here, again, starting in October, rate increases, everything else is the same. It does include that additional PEO, but it also includes the downtown officer and our $30,000 contribution to the MDA. So you definitely have a lot of things to look at. I'm happy to answer any questions as we move forward, but I just wanted to give you enough time to sort of see a few scenarios. If you want other scenarios, we can definitely pull that together for the next meeting. But the goal is to be as lean as possible on our expenses and as hopeful as possible on our revenues. Meter revenue, like I said, is about half of our revenue, and lease revenue is a really large portion as well. So with those factors just sort of being up in the air right now, it's going to be exponentially important that we keep our expenses for FY21 down as much as possible.
So Tiffany, well, I'll start by saying, in the past, all of us have looked at these budgets at different levels and different levels of detail. But I think, as with the rest of the world, there is so much unknown about what's going to happen, certainly the next 3 months to 6 months. It is possible that in September, the world could look again like it did for us in April and May, meaning another wave, another set of shutdowns, or another set of choices that severely restrict or limit public participation and travel downtown. So, Tiffany, I think it would be helpful to me and maybe to others to create a scenario that at a baseline supports our bond covenants of that 1.5 debt coverage ratio, which by my guerrilla math is about 770,000. We only have so many levers to pull as a commission, but I think I would recommend, I would like to see a scenario where we have a worst case scenario to keep us at that debt coverage ratio, but what levers can be pulled if we have 2 more months like we did in April and May in the fall, in fiscal year 21. Doesn't have to be in the fall, but so I'd like other board members' opinion on that if you're interested in that scenario as well, because it's just as likely as the other.
I'm actually interested in a different scenario too, Joe. I'm interested in we do not achieve our debt service coverage. I don't think, and I'd like to see a monthly schedule as opposed to an annual schedule where we can plug in revenues, both meter revenue and lease revenue on a monthly basis. The first thing that comes to my mind right now is I think about the marathon, and I don't know, is the marathon canceled at this point? Is it still sort of TV? It is. Okay. So I'm going to be really surprised if we're able to achieve a $900,000 metered parking revenue. And that's the static number through all basically 4 scenarios. I think we really have to plan for, God, we're going to be at a 1.1. What does that mean? We have to get out in front of that and have conversations with, whoever, we need to have those conversations with, bring Ellen in, et cetera, because there's a really good chance we're not getting there. Right. And just to be pragmatic about this, and I don't think we can be, as a commission, sitting on our hands and going, gosh, we really hope it goes well. And then it doesn't go well. And we haven't really discussed what that looks like. So yeah, let's create another scenario, Joe, if you're comfortable with that. That's, a really a pretty tough one.
Yeah, I concur. I think we're going in the same direction. The information then I would like in scenario number 6, Pat's really bad case scenario, is your opinion, our bond counsel's opinion. You know, what are the steps in, I'm careful not to say default, but from
Right.
where do we supplement our coverages when we get there? If we have a $500,000 a year in meter revenue, obviously Jim's opinion, county or city finance office's opinion, Missoula redevelopment opinion, Dorsey Whitney's opinion, so that in December or this time next year, if we need to find $400,000 in cash, we know, you know, going back, the best advice I've heard over the last 2 or 3 months is what scenario in 2 or 3 months do you wish we would have prepared for or known about today? And I think Pat's comment is very good. It's a unlikely scenario, but it's not improbable scenario. And so what we would be happy to know that scenario and what choices we made on May 19th, May 18th, rather than we're 2 weeks to go from our bond payment and we don't know what to do.
Absolutely. I took notes on both of those scenarios and I'll start working on them. And but in conversation with a lot of the different parking authorities in Montana, I feel real good about FY20 and where we're at and what we're doing. You're absolutely right. It'll be very important to start looking at FY21, and fortunately, being on the fiscal year, we have a little bit more time, and I will absolutely have that information ready for you for our next meeting.
Thanks. And something else that the board members and our administration need to keep in mind is a lot of these financial decisions will have intended effects and unintended effects. So our grants and contributions, those are significant contributions to entities that we, as individuals and a commission, have supported and care about. And if we are to make a decision that changes that, we need to give them plenty of heads up or notice. Here's why, and so that they can prepare for it.
Thank you. Mr. Romer, I agree with what's been said. Love to see that scenario, both of them. That's all we got.
Okay, so I think we have some good direction. This is my own question, I guess, Tiffany. Do we have July 1st is the beginning of the fiscal year. Do we have to have an approved budget by July 1st?
There's no requirement that I'm aware of. Generally, we go with the city budget, and because they wait for valuations, it's almost always after July 1st. Often the city budget isn't approved until August, September. We have not gotten the budget schedule from the city just yet. I do know that the finance director and city administration are working on that schedule, and I anticipate seeing it soon. But in years prior, no, we haven't. I do always try and make sure that we're sort of ahead of the game, but just a few days after July 1st absolutely should not be a problem.
Any other questions or, pardon me, direction about the budget?
Just a comment. This is Jim. Tiffany, I don't know what spreadsheets you use, but as you know, we have those monthly Excel spreadsheets and things like that. So if that can be in that, they're already designed and ready to go. I think you have those. I don't know if that's what you're using to put together the whole budget or not, but we can certainly help in that process.
Thank you. I'll have Jody get with Brenda on that for sure. We're not working with them, but they're always absolutely helpful. And I think that especially on Pat's request for a monthly, it'll really be easier, and also in a format that they're used to seeing. So that would be great. Thank you.
Last comment, and this will be obvious to almost everyone, but Tiffany, I also think in advance of our next meeting where we really look at these options, that the mayor's office should be looped into this, because if we do make some decisions about lease revenue, enforcement, grants and contributions, again, limited amount of things that we can cut, they will affect the mayor's office and some of the decisions that they'll make.
Absolutely. I will make sure that they are tied in and possibly available as well.
Okay, so moving on, if anybody doesn't have any other questions, security camera policy. This is something that Tiffany addressed in her report. It's a resolution that we passed last time, but it's not a resolution.
It is a resolution, but we didn't pass it last time. We just discussed that it would be forthcoming at this meeting.
Sorry, thanks. So I'll turn it to you, Tiffany, to introduce it and what you need from us.
Great. I will go back to my superior screen sharing skills here. Let's see. Okay, so I have the draft policy here that you've all been emailed. It's very short, just a little quick 2-pager. We worked with the city attorney's office and of just some industry examples. And essentially, as I said in the director's report, we're looking to use video surveillance recording within our structures as, excuse me, as a means to just make sure that our gating equipment is safe and our patrons are safe as well. But so the policy is very straightforward. If anyone has any questions, please do let me know, but I will be asking that we take a vote on this at our next meeting. So that way, when the security cameras are fully ready to be online, we have a policy dictating who, what, when, where, and why. So the policy does apply to all of our employees regarding the use of video surveillance. And this policy specifically does not include our mobile license plate recognition cameras. As you know, that was approved in a policy at your previous meeting. And so that is dictated on a different policy. And so it's just a little bit different. It talks about storage and retention and access to recordings. And by access to recordings, it's essentially approved MPC personnel and really just if the police department were to come to us with a request for video footage, that sort of a thing. We will have forms created for when the request was made, who's requesting it, that sort of a thing. Jody is currently working with the sign company to get some proofs on signage for those, as she had mentioned. But essentially, it'll just say something along the lines of the area is under video surveillance, but it may not be monitored 24 hours a day. And so that's just essentially the draft there of the policy. And then we also just have a standard resolution approving that policy. So I'm gonna stop sharing for now, but if you'd like me to go back, I certainly can. So it's very straightforward. Really, it's just to make sure that we have a policy in place before the cameras are up and running.
Tiffany, has city attorney looked at this policy?
Yes, sir.
Is video considered public record?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't believe that it is, especially with this policy in place, but I will follow up.
JR, do you have an opinion on that?
I think there's probably good arguments that it is, just in terms of privacy and that analysis, you know, balancing the right to know with the public, and because it's governmental. But I'd like to see what Nugent says about it. I could definitely see arguments, like I said, that it is public.
That's where I'm going, Tiffany. If you could get clarification from Nugent and either add some language to it or tell us why language was not added to it. First of all, can a member of the public come in and ask to see, can I look at this video from 8 to 10 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th? Something like that. What's our policy and procedure for a member of the public to review video in one of our cameras? And then very clearly reference what steps, if any, and I don't know, the Missoula Police Department needs to provide to us to review video.
Mhm.
Is it as extreme as a warrant, or can they walk into your office and review it anytime that they want to? I mean, somewhere in between there. It's not necessarily an objection to that access, but I think we just need to be prepared in our policy. If we, as John put it an hour ago, we have this large amount of data and information that could or would be very valuable or other. How do we prepare for that and protect the public, protect the commission, protect the city, protect the public? I just want to make sure that we've researched that because surveillance is a difficult topic.
Absolutely.
Ditto on the retention piece of it. I'd like some input from the city attorney's office. I've run into problems like that just in my practice as far as spoliation and things. I'd like to see a longer retention period. I don't know enough about the technology to know if that's even possible, but I think if it could be longer than 30 days, better. So I just like some input from them on that as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think that the policy in itself does sort of go over that it will essentially be erased and written over unless it's retained as part of a criminal investigation or court proceedings, and that it can only be released according to applicable law, but it really doesn't go into very specific, like what law and who can. And so we can absolutely do that without a problem. And I will have that ready for you at our next meeting.
In the same question, then also is a policy internal to the commission who can review it. Just using names because of positions, is that a Tiffany only? Is that Jody and Zoe who can look at it? If they get a report of vandalism or whatever, do we have any restrictions or limitations? Who within the commission, they want to see who parked in front of Reds at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday?
Yes, so there will be, as part of the policy, the first and foremost, either myself or the parking services manager, so the director or the parking services manager, as the director's designee, would need to approve all requests to access the system, including any real-time monitoring or any of the recorded access, but all of that would be done with counsel from the city attorney's office as well. So even if someone did want to look at it from our staff, they would have to go through a multitude of steps to be able to do so, but we can further expand on that as well.
Any other questions or comments about the draft policy? Pat, anything? So I'll move on and move towards closing. I would like your opinion about our next meeting. It is, if we were to jump back to our regularly scheduled meeting, it is June 4th, probably likely to be virtual just like this, or as you heard, calendar, or we can jump all the way to July 2nd, which is the Thursday before the holiday. My initial thoughts are June 4th seems close. June 2nd or July 2nd seems a little bit out there. We have a budget to discuss. We have this policy to discuss. Tiffany, do you expect any other action items in either June, July?
Not at this point. No, not really that I can think of as far as like requests that we would get on an annual basis and with the budget already considered. I don't believe so. I will definitely be sure to try and give as much advance notice as possible, but no.
Jim, do you expect April, May's financials to be at a point. If we were to meet at June 4th, would we have anything to look at that shows the economic condition over the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Well, we would certainly have April because we have that information that we can work on now. There's no way that we would have May by June 4th. We usually get that information, about the same time, second week or so of the following month. So, it would be difficult to say before the third week in June that we would have May's. April is not a problem. But certainly by July 2nd, we would have April and May.
Yeah.
Chair, I would be happy to put together a survey maybe for some dates the last week of June as well, if you'd like.
Well, my initial opinion, subject to others, is that we get back to our usual date, whether that's June or July, but not have another off date. That's just my initial thought. I'm not too concerned about July 2nd being so close to the holiday. But we obviously want to make sure that we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay, with July 2nd too, Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Agreed.
Pat, you said July 2nd?
That works, yeah.
Works for me as well.
Okay.
I have a question,
Okay.
Tiffany, about, say in July or August, we go back to meetings in the Reedy.
Mhm.
Are we still going to have a virtual component at that point? So I'm a little nervous about waiting back in, given my health history. So I'm just curious what the status looks like going forward. Would that just be a conference call?
I can't say. I think that, the mayor's direction has been that we've made a lot of really great strides for virtual public meetings, particularly in the city council realm with having folks be able to call in and participate. I don't know that that would be much different for us. I think that even if we did have folks in the Jack Reedy, we could likely provide a virtual component as well. It would just be a little bit tricky, but we could definitely figure something out, especially with enough notice. I don't know that we could. So.
All right, cool.
It's a good idea. John, did we interrupt you? Did you have a comment about the next meeting?
No. Thank you very much, Joe. I'll go with the second.
Okay.
I had originally felt that maybe we ought to be getting together because we got a lot of information in the budget to digest, but that gives staff a little more time to just have it already. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And we'll have those numbers from presumably both months. So I'm good.
Okay, so Tiffany, I guess we go for July 2nd as our next meeting. I would ask Jim if and when you get everything assembled for April and May, that we get that as soon as possible, because that will at least inform my decisions about, not decisions, but at least thoughts about the budget and the two scenarios to begin considering.
Yeah, we'll send those out as soon as they're ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah. Jim, would you be able to send out April's sooner?
But yeah, I'll send out April as soon as it's ready to go. We won't hold that up at all.
Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order? Jody, do we have any members of the public in the? Okay. Okay. Absent any further comment, I'll adjourn the meeting at 1:18.
Thank you.
Excellent. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Did we not have some action items today, or am I just missing something?
No, we did not have any action items today. Would you like to take some action?
No, I just was looking at the agenda. Thanks. I'm good, thanks.
Okay.
All right,
Meeting is
take care,
All
everybody.
right.
Bye.
Thank you.